how do you deal with someone who is acting in bad faith, who is Black, who is accusing people of being racist, but simply because other people are critiquing their very bad behavior, but other people are using those critiques of that person as an avenue to be racist against them in a way that is real? Like that dynamic. Like, have you encountered that dynamic before? Because it's not just on Twitter. I've seen that in real life too.
Okay,
and
wait
it becomes
a minute.
this toxic.
Can you break it down a little bit? Can you give me your real life example, maybe? Or do you need to keep that private?
There are people who, when they are criticized, if the person who's criticizing them is white, they will reflexively call that person a racist, whether or not what they're doing is racist.
Yeah, everyone always says that, but I rarely see that happen. But
I get called a racist 4 times a week at the hospital by drunk people who are just don't want to
Oh yeah, in the hospital, I can imagine.
Yeah. So stuff like that.
My mom
let me turn that. Let me ask you that. That's a specific question that's not getting into a bunch of subtweet drama. What would you say to a white person? How would you tell a white person to navigate the distinction between this person is telling me I'm doing something racist and that is a legitimate thing that I need to pay attention to, versus this is somebody who is acting in bad faith, just trying to fuck with me?
You mean, how do I distinguish between those people?
Yeah, or how would you how would you suggest one navigate that for somebody who's dealing with that?
I think that once you have a signal that someone is acting in bad faith, it's what happens after that is really totally up to you, right? And so you have to just make a decision. For me, if I recognize that someone's acting in bad faith, sometimes I'll, for instance, I spent quite a bit of time tweeting to someone who I know is acting in bad faith, but they're not really bad faith. They're more because I spent hours finding this out. And I just want to preface this by saying that, I spent 20 hours finding this out, okay? But this person has low self-esteem, and they basically, have a, what's the word? Predilection, but that's not the word that I want. But something, compulsion is the word that I'm looking for, to be a troll. Okay, and so they really can't control. They can't control it, and I investigated that person, right? I talked to them just to investigate that phenomenon because I was what is going on here? It's fascinating to me, Would I recommend that the layperson engage in 20 hours of talking to someone just to find out how that person is thinking and why?
Yeah.
No. I think that mostly people need to protect themselves from bad actors. So I would say remove yourself if you can. If you're in a situation where you can't remove yourself, then you need to protect yourself. And I think that the best way to protect yourself is by just being truthful is a really good way. Because all this shit is BS.
and not necessarily, I'll add on to that, is very often the response to that will be for other white people to use that as an opportunity to actually engage in racist behavior disguised as critique of the bad behavior. That's
what you're talking about. Okay, now it makes sense. Okay,
yeah.
So you're saying
so I'll give you an example of something that will take it out of the internet. This is something I've seen happen at the hospital where I had a dude who came in and he'd been shot and he was like a gang member. He's a Black kid, and the nurses were he was being treated very poorly by the staff, and he wasn't being treated very poorly initially. It's difficult to tell in the hospital between what's bad behavior and what's just baseline. But anyway, this dude basically just accused everybody who was there of being a racist, just off from word go, right? And then all the people there started treating him like shit in the way that people who are racist treat people like shit, which is different than you're just being an asshole. It's okay for me to be verbally abusive to you in the way that I want to be. Like, it's very, you can tell. And so that's a difficult situation to navigate, because like on the one hand, I can tell you're being an asshole, but I also don't want to add to this dog pile of shit that you're getting that's unjustified, right? So like, what do I do? And like, ultimately I just dealt with the guy's issue and like it calmed him down.
I mean, I think that's an issue of professionalism.
Yeah.
So I would couch it in that. I would just like be like, you know, just what the patient does is what the patient does. What you do is what you do, and you work here. Like, so, like, I mean, like, I just leave it at that. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah, I get. I wish I had like a better, more straightforward question. I don't really have any. Like,
no. It's a good question, but like, it's just
I don't really have any like 101 level questions. So wait. All I've got is like.
Maybe tell me a little bit about what you saw online that made you think of that.
I don't want to.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's like, if I did, I would be contributing to what I perceive as negative behavior. And I don't want to do that.
Just by telling me? Yeah.
Like, it's gotten to that point where I'm just not even comfortable discussing it, even like really obliquely. I probably shouldn't have even brought it up. But like, I don't expect there to be a lot of crossover between the communities, so I'm not that worried about it. But yeah, it's like, it's not an isolated thing. Like, I've seen it in other places. It's very much like a social media phenomenon, where somebody who is from a marginalized group will behave in a very bad way, like do something very fucked up. People will criticize them for it appropriately. That person will respond in a way that is fucked up. But then they get dogpiled by white people who are very clearly just trying to dunk on somebody who's marginalized. And so you're in this space where, how do you address that other than just walking the fuck away?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything you can do about that, right? Like, I mean, racist gonna racist, right? Like, I mean, like, like you can't stop them. You can't do it. What can you do? You know?
Yeah. It's frustrating because like it creates a space where you can't in good faith address problematic behavior, because it is used as an excuse to be racist.
That's like basically a description of the internet, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support, and see you next time.